to support this, this important bill, seeking to tackle this most international of criminal problems. The scale of global financial crime is quite mind-boggling, something up to 5% of gross world product. It depends which estimate you look at, and of course you can't say it absolutely certainly, but something somewhere between 2 and 5 trillion US dollars. And the confiscation rate runs, on an optimistic view, at something perhaps around 1%. And sometimes it's thought that this is, economic crime is somehow in a separate category, is different from other crime. No, it is part of those same crimes. There's a particularly close interlink with fraud and with cybercrime, and collectively those three, money laundering, fraud and cyber, collectively distance crime, collectively now are most crime, the majority of crime by volume in this country. But actually, more broadly than that, virtually all crime that has a financial motivation touches on money laundering at some level. You've got a mix of organised crime groups pulling off these huge cyber crimes down to individually small but cumulatively very large volume frauds. Some groups that have got into a sort of vertical integration, controlling every part of the chain, others specialising in one particular part of the chain, such as in, for example, ransomware as a service. There's a merging of criminal actors with a nexus to states, and then, of course, there are the kleptocrats who got filthy rich on the plunder from their fellow citizens. There is a huge amount that needs to be done in this area. Much of it needs to be done globally, but a country like ours needs absolutely to be in the lead. The world has actually made quite some progress in this area, and in key aspects we have been a leader, but we have also had our lacunae. And high on that list has been the transparency of who is really behind and who ultimately benefits from corporate structures and economic assets. We do have a substantial and in many ways effective architecture on tackling money laundering, and have had for some time. But with the regime around SARS, suspicious activity reports, there has been an important question of, is it sufficiently efficient? Is it focused enough to make the most difference while minimising deadweight? And another question about whether we're really harnessing fully the power and the capabilities of banks themselves, and particularly if you compare, for example, with the American Patriot Act, Section 314B, the question, should there be more direct sharing of intelligence between them, and if so, how do you manage the competition policy aspects? And finally, however much improvement we make, however much innovating we do, the criminals are doing the same, with ever more sophisticated technology and increasingly bypassing the systems that we have been used to in the past, using cryptocurrency and crypto assets. So with this bill, most importantly, it moves to plug that transparency gap with the reforms of Companies House and limited partnerships as the backbone of the bill. It modernises seizure by bringing crypto assets into scope of the civil forfeiture powers, and it moves from a sort of compliance-driven anti-money laundering system to one which is more proactive and intelligence-led, with rationalised SARS and DAML's defence against money laundering requirements. Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome all the aspects of the bill, actually, but I particularly welcome the provisions around information sharing. And within that, particularly around the broad scope to include all types of economic crime, including, importantly, volume fraud. And I'd like to ask ministers here today to really test out if these powers go as far as they productively can. And I particularly want to press ministers plural, and actually it's not just these two departments that we have here today, it's also about the Treasury and about the regulatory sector and about the private sector coming together to make sure we are linking up the different parts of our financial services sector and indeed the wider professional services sector to best effect. Information sharing and intelligence sharing could be so much more powerful if we reformed the way that payments are made. so that in certain circumstances where suspicious activity is detected, it is possible to slow down or pause payments. So we can use the system not just to track down where money laundering payments or fraudulent payments have been made after the fact, but to stop them happening before the fact. That could be genuinely a game changer. And as I say, to repeat, I really, really strongly encourage these two excellent ministers from these departments to be in communication with the Treasury and others about that. But I support this bill and I wish ministers well with it. It is, of course, part of a wider set of reforms that also includes the sanctions regime itself, the creation of the National Economic Crime Centre, the Kleptocracy Cell, and the overall economic crime plan. Importantly, our international work with like-minded partners, with the Financial Action Task Force, with the Crown Dependencies and overseas territories. The reform of visas, which came up, which is, of course, a part of this too, and, of course, the bill that we recently passed, the Economic Crime Transparency and Enforcement Act. And there will be more to come, I am sure, including on corporate criminal liability. I'm going to close now, Madam Deputy Speaker, just in saying that, look, these reforms are important and they are not in tension with the success of our financial services sector, quite the reverse. These reforms are about enhancing the reputation both of British financial services and more broadly about the United Kingdom and our reliance on and respect for the rule of law. They are about protecting and growing our business. They're about doing the right thing, ceding no space to the criminals and the kleptocrats. And Madam Deputy Speaker, in the what I think seems unlikely event that we divide this afternoon, I will be proud to vote aye for this bill.